It was a cold and rainy afternoon in the city. Dark clouds filled the sky, and the sound of raindrops echoed through the streets. At a small bus stop near the edge of town, a young man named Ethan sat alone on a wooden bench. People hurried past him with umbrellas, eager to escape the rain and return home. Ethan watched them quietly while staring at the wet road in front of him. His life had become a routine of work, sleep, and endless responsibilities. Although he was surrounded by people every day, he often felt alone. Deep inside, there was an emptiness he could never fully explain. As the rain continued falling, Ethan sat silently, unaware that this ordinary afternoon was about to change his life forever. A few minutes later, a young woman appeared through the rain. She held a small umbrella above her head and walked carefully toward the bus stop. Her long hair moved gently with the wind, and her eyes seemed calm and thoughtful. When she reached the shelter, she quietly folded her umbrella and sat down on the bench a short distance from Ethan. Neither of them spoke. The only sound between them was the steady rhythm of rain falling onto the pavement. Ethan glanced at her for a moment before looking away again. To him, she was simply another stranger waiting for the bus. Yet, something about her presence felt strangely comforting. For reasons he could not understand, the lonely bus stop suddenly felt a little less lonely. Several minutes passed in complete silence. Ethan continued watching the rain while the young woman looked out at the busy street. Then, unexpectedly, she turned toward him with a gentle smile. It was a simple smile, warm and sincere, unlike anything Ethan had seen that day. For a brief moment, he felt surprised. Then she softly said a single word. "Hello." It was such a small greeting, something people said every day without thinking. But to Ethan, that simple word felt different. It broke the silence that had surrounded him for so long. Slightly nervous, he smiled back and replied, "Hello." Neither of them realized it at that moment, but their lives had just begun moving in a completely new direction. After exchanging greetings, they began talking casually while waiting for the bus. At first, the conversation was simple. They spoke about the weather, the rain, and how unpredictable the city could be during the rainy season. Ethan learned that her name was Lily. She had recently started working at a nearby bookstore and often took this bus home. Lily discovered that Ethan worked in an office downtown and visited this bus stop almost every evening. The conversation was short, yet it felt surprisingly natural. Neither of them struggled to find words. Somehow, speaking with each other felt easy. As the minutes passed, both began forgetting about the rain outside. Soon, the bus arrived and stopped in front of them. People quickly stood up and prepared to leave. Ethan and Lily also rose from the bench. Before stepping onto the bus, Lily turned toward him once again and smiled. Ethan smiled back. It was only a brief moment, lasting no more than a few seconds. To anyone else, it seemed completely ordinary. But sometimes, the most important moments in life arrive quietly, without warning. As the bus pulled away from the stop, neither Ethan nor Lily knew that they would meet again. And neither of them could imagine that one simple word spoken on a rainy afternoon would eventually become the beginning of a beautiful love story. After that rainy afternoon, Ethan returned home as usual. His small apartment was neat but silent. Every evening followed the same routine. He came home from work, prepared a simple dinner, watched television for a while, and then went to sleep. The next day, everything would repeat again. From the outside, his life seemed perfectly normal. He had a stable job, a place to live, and enough money to support himself. But deep inside, Ethan often felt something was missing. Most of his friends had become busy with their own lives, and his days felt increasingly lonely. Sometimes he wondered if life would always remain the same. He never expected that a simple conversation with a stranger at a bus stop would stay in his thoughts for days afterward. While Ethan was living his quiet life, Lily was facing struggles of her own. She had recently moved to the city to start a new chapter in her life. Although she smiled often, very few people knew how difficult the transition had been for her. She missed her family and the small town where she had grown up. The city felt crowded, fast, and unfamiliar. Every day she worked long hours at the bookstore and returned to her apartment feeling exhausted. Sometimes she sat by the window at night, watching the city lights while wondering if she truly belonged there. Even though she was surrounded by thousands of people, she often felt completely alone. Over the next few days, Ethan found himself thinking about Lily more often than he expected. He remembered her warm smile and the calm way she spoke. There was something comforting about their conversation that he could not explain. Normally, he forgot small encounters quickly, but this time felt different. Whenever he passed the bus stop, he looked around without realizing it. Part of him hoped he might see her again. At first, he laughed at himself for thinking this way. After all, they were just strangers who had talked for a few minutes. Yet somehow, the memory of that rainy afternoon remained fresh in his mind. 1 week later, Ethan arrived at the bus stop after work and immediately noticed someone sitting on the bench. It was Lily. She was reading a book while waiting for the bus. For a moment, Ethan felt nervous. Then, Lily looked up and recognized him. A smile appeared on her face instantly. "Hello again," she said. Ethan smiled back. "Hello." This time, the conversation started much more naturally. They talked about their week, their jobs, and their favorite books. Minutes passed quickly, and before either of them realized it, they were laughing together. The awkwardness of being strangers had already begun to disappear. As the bus arrived and they prepared to leave, both felt surprisingly happy. The conversation had been simple, yet it made their day feel brighter. Neither Ethan nor Lily could explain why they enjoyed talking to each other so much. There was no grand event, no dramatic moment, and no instant declaration of love. There was only a growing sense of comfort and connection. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt less lonely. And for the first time since moving to the city, Lily felt like she had found someone who truly listened. What neither of them realized was that this small friendship was quietly becoming the foundation of something much deeper. After their second meeting at the bus stop, something quietly began to change. Ethan and Lily started seeing each other more often. Sometimes they met while waiting for the bus after work. Other times they happened to cross paths near the bookstore where Lily worked. At first, their meetings felt like simple coincidences, but as the days passed, both secretly began hoping they would see each other again. Whenever Ethan arrived at the bus stop, he found himself looking around for Lily. And whenever Lily finished work, she often wondered if Ethan would be there, waiting for the bus. Neither of them said anything about it, but those brief meetings slowly became the happiest part of their day. As their conversations became longer, they began sharing more about their lives. Ethan talked about his office job and how repetitive his daily routine had become. Lily shared stories about her bookstore and the interesting people she met every day. Sometimes they laughed about funny customers. Other times, they talked about childhood memories and dreams they once had. The conversations were never complicated. They were simply two people enjoying each other's company. Yet with every conversation, they learned something new about one another. Slowly, the distance between strangers disappeared, replaced by a growing sense of familiarity and trust. One rainy evening, the bus was delayed because of bad weather. Instead of standing at the bus stop, Lily suggested waiting inside a small coffee shop nearby. Ethan agreed. The coffee shop was warm and cozy, filled with the smell of fresh coffee and soft music. They sat near the window and continued talking while watching the rain fall outside. What began as a simple way to escape the weather soon became a new tradition. Over the following weeks, they returned to the same coffee shop many times. It became their favorite place to talk, laugh, and spend time together. Without realizing it, they were creating memories that would stay with them forever. As the friendship grew stronger, both Ethan and Lily noticed something unusual. They started looking forward to seeing each other every day. Difficult days at work felt easier because they knew they would have someone to talk to afterward. Small achievements became more meaningful because they had someone to share them with. Even ordinary moments felt special. Sometimes, Ethan would find himself smiling while reading a message from Lily. Sometimes, Lily would catch herself thinking about something Ethan had said earlier in the day. Their friendship brought a sense of happiness neither had expected to find. Weeks turned into months, and their bond continued growing naturally. They never tried to impress each other or pretend to be someone else. Around each other, they felt comfortable being themselves. Ethan admired Lily's kindness and optimism. Lily appreciated Ethan's honesty and quiet strength. The more time they spent together, the more connected they felt. Yet, neither of them fully understood what was happening inside their hearts. They still called it friendship. But somewhere between the bus stop conversations, the coffee shop meetings, and the countless shared smiles, something deeper had quietly begun to grow. As time passed, Ethan realized that his favorite part of the day was no longer finishing work and going home. Instead, it was the moments he spent with Lily. No matter how stressful his day had been, seeing her smile somehow made everything feel lighter. During meetings at work, he occasionally found himself thinking about their conversations. When something funny happened, Lily was often the first person he wanted to tell. For the first time in many years, Ethan felt excited about tomorrow. Life no longer felt like an endless routine. It felt like something beautiful was slowly unfolding in front of him. Lily noticed similar changes in her own life. The city that once felt cold and unfamiliar no longer seemed so lonely. She looked forward to visiting the coffee shop after work, wondering what stories Ethan would share that day. Whenever she faced a difficult customer or a stressful situation at the bookstore, she found comfort knowing she could talk to him later. Ethan had become a source of calm and happiness in her life. Without realizing it, Lily smiled more often than she had in months. Even her coworkers began noticing the positive change in her personality. As their friendship continued growing, they started spending more time together outside of their usual routines. On weekends, they walked through parks filled with colorful flowers and talked for hours. Sometimes they visited small bookstores where Lily excitedly recommended her favorite novels. Other times, they sat by the river watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and gold. None of these moments were extraordinary on their own, yet together they became precious memories. Every shared laugh, every conversation, and every quiet moment brought them closer than before. Slowly, both Ethan and Lily began noticing feelings they could not easily understand. When Ethan received a message from Lily, his heart felt strangely happy. When Lily saw Ethan waiting for her outside the bookstore, she felt a warmth she had never felt before. Neither of them talked about these emotions. They simply enjoyed being together and tried not to think too much about it. Deep down, however, both knew that their connection was becoming something more than ordinary friendship. The problem was that neither of them knew how to express it. Although they cared deeply about each other, fear quietly entered their hearts. Ethan worried that confessing his feelings might ruin their friendship. Lily felt the same way. What if the other person did not feel the same? What if everything became awkward afterward? The thought frightened them both. As a result, they kept their feelings hidden behind smiles and casual conversations. Neither realized that the other was carrying the exact same secret. And so, while their hearts grew closer each day, both remained silent, unaware that love had already begun growing between them. As the weeks passed, Ethan could no longer deny that something inside him was changing. What had started as a simple friendship had slowly become much more important to him. He found himself thinking about Lily throughout the day. Sometimes he would catch himself smiling while remembering a conversation they had shared. Other times, he would see something that reminded him of her and immediately want to tell her about it. It was a feeling he had not experienced in a very long time. Yet the more he realized how much she meant to him, the more afraid he became. For the first time, Ethan understood that losing Lily would hurt far more than never meeting her at all. Lily was experiencing similar emotions. Whenever she spent time with Ethan, she felt happy and comfortable in a way she had never expected. Around him, she never needed to pretend to be someone else. She could talk freely, laugh openly, and share her worries without fear of being judged. Slowly, Ethan had become the person she trusted most. Some nights after returning home, she found herself replaying their conversations in her mind. She often wondered if Ethan missed her the same way she missed him. But every time those thoughts appeared, she quickly pushed them away. She was afraid of hoping for something that might never happen. There were many small moments that neither of them could forget. Sometimes their eyes met during a conversation, and both looked away nervously. Sometimes they sat quietly together without speaking, yet the silence felt peaceful rather than uncomfortable. One evening, while walking through the park, Lily almost slipped on a wet path. Ethan quickly reached out and caught her hand. For a brief second, neither of them moved. Their hearts raced, and the world seemed strangely quiet around them. Then they smiled awkwardly and continued walking. Neither mentioned the moment afterward, but neither forgot it either. Despite the growing feelings in their hearts, both remained silent. Ethan often rehearsed possible confessions in his mind, only to lose his courage whenever he saw Lily. Lily also wanted to tell him how she felt, but fear always stopped her. They worried that one wrong word could destroy everything they had built together. Their friendship had become one of the most important parts of their lives. The thought of losing it felt unbearable. So instead of speaking honestly, they continued pretending that nothing had changed, even though both knew the truth deep inside. One evening, after spending hours talking at their favorite coffee shop, Ethan and Lily stood outside under the city lights, preparing to go home. They exchanged their usual smiles and said goodbye, but as they walked in opposite directions, both secretly turned around at the same time to look back. For a brief moment, their eyes met once again. Neither said anything. Neither moved. Yet in that silent moment, both hearts understood something important. Their friendship was no longer just friendship. Love had quietly entered their lives. The only problem was that neither of them was brave enough to say it aloud. One afternoon, Lily arrived at the coffee shop looking unusually quiet. Normally, she greeted Ethan with a warm smile, but this time something seemed different. As they sat near the window, she stared at her cup for several moments before speaking. Finally, she took a deep breath and told him the news. A publishing company in another city had offered her a new job opportunity. It was the kind of opportunity she had always dreamed about. The position would help her career grow and open many new doors for her future. Ethan listened carefully, trying to smile and congratulate her. But deep inside, his heart suddenly felt heavy. Lily explained that she would be leaving in just a few weeks. Although she sounded excited, Ethan could see sadness hidden behind her smile. He wanted to tell her how much she meant to him. He wanted to ask her not to leave, but the words never came out. Instead, he simply said that he was happy for her and wished her success. Lily nodded and thanked him softly. She was hoping he would say something more. She secretly wished he would give her a reason to stay. But Ethan remained silent, and because he stayed silent, Lily did the same. Over the next few weeks, they continued spending time together just as they always had. They visited the coffee shop, walked through the park, and shared countless conversations. Yet everything felt different now. Both knew their time together was running out. Every laugh felt more meaningful. Every memory felt more precious. Sometimes during quiet moments, they would simply look at each other and wonder if they should finally reveal their feelings. But fear continued holding them back. Each day brought them closer to goodbye, and neither knew how to stop it. Eventually, Lily's final day in the city arrived. The weather was strangely similar to the day they first met. Dark clouds filled the sky, and light rain began falling over the streets. Ethan and Lily spent the afternoon together at their favorite coffee shop. They talked, laughed, and shared memories from the past months. But beneath every conversation was the painful knowledge that this would be their last day together. As evening approached, the silence between them grew heavier. There were so many things they wanted to say, yet neither could find the courage. Later that evening, they stood together at the same bus stop where everything had begun. Rain fell softly around them as buses came and went. Finally, Lily's bus arrived. She looked at Ethan and smiled, though her eyes were filled with sadness. Ethan smiled back, hiding the heartbreak inside his chest. For a moment, it seemed as though one of them might finally speak the truth. But the moment passed. Lily quietly stepped onto the bus. As the doors closed, she looked back one last time. Ethan watched the bus disappear into the rainy night, and as he stood there alone, he realized something painful. The person who had started as a simple stranger had become someone he could no longer imagine living without. The days after Lily left felt strangely empty for Ethan. Every morning he went to work as usual. Every evening he followed the same familiar routine. Yet nothing felt the same anymore. The bus stop seemed quieter. The coffee shop felt less welcoming. Even the city itself appeared colder than before. Ethan tried to convince himself that everything would eventually return to normal. After all, Lily had only been a friend. But deep inside, he knew that was not true. The more he tried to ignore his feelings, the more obvious they became. For the first time, he understood how much her presence had brightened his life. As the weeks passed, Ethan found himself missing the smallest things about Lily. He missed her laugh when she found something funny. He missed the way she became excited whenever she talked about books. He missed their long conversations about dreams, fears, and life. Sometimes he would reach for his phone, wanting to send her a message, only to stop and stare at the screen. He did not know what to say. The silence between them felt uncomfortable and painful. The distance between their cities seemed much greater than the miles shown on a map. It felt as though an important piece of his life was suddenly missing. Meanwhile, Lily was experiencing the same emotions. Her new job was everything she had hoped for. The company was wonderful, and the opportunities were exciting. Yet, despite all the success, she often felt lonely. Every evening, she found herself remembering the coffee shop, the rainy bus stop, and the countless conversations she had shared with Ethan. Whenever something interesting happened at work, her first thought was to tell him about it. But then she remembered he was no longer there beside her. Slowly, Lily began realizing something she had been afraid to admit. She had not only left a city behind, she had left someone she truly cared about. One evening, Ethan sat alone in the coffee shop where they had spent so many afternoons together. As he looked at the empty chair across from him, memories flooded his mind. He remembered the day they first met. He remembered her smile and the simple word that had started everything. "Hello." Suddenly, the truth became impossible to ignore. What he felt for Lily was not friendship. It had never been just friendship. He loved her. At almost the same moment, miles away in another city, Lily sat by her apartment window and came to the exact same realization. She loved Ethan too. The feelings they had hidden for so long were finally impossible to deny. As both of them accepted their feelings, a new emotion appeared: regret. They regretted every moment they had remained silent. They regretted every opportunity they had allowed to pass. Most of all, they regretted letting fear make their decisions. Ethan wondered what might have happened if he had told Lily the truth before she left. Lily wondered the same thing. Night after night, both replayed old memories and imagined different endings. But no matter how much they thought about the past, one question remained in their hearts. Was it too late? Or was their story still waiting for its next chapter? One rainy evening, Ethan found himself standing once again at the same bus stop where he had first met Lily. The rain fell softly around him, just as it had on that unforgettable day months ago. As he watched the empty bench, memories flooded his mind. He remembered her smile. He remembered their conversations. He remembered how much happier his life had become because of her. For weeks he had tried to move on, convincing himself that it was too late. But deep inside, he knew the truth. The regret of never telling Lily how he felt was becoming harder to live with than the fear of rejection. At that moment, Ethan made a decision. He would stop running from his feelings. No matter what happened, Lily deserved to know the truth. The next morning, Ethan took a day off from work and bought a train ticket to Lily's city. As the train moved through the countryside, his emotions felt completely out of control. Sometimes he felt excited. Other times he felt terrified. What if Lily no longer felt the same way? What if she had already moved on with her life? Every possible outcome crossed his mind. Yet despite all his fears, he continued moving forward. For the first time, he was choosing courage instead of comfort. As the train carried him closer to Lily, Ethan realized that some opportunities in life were too important to lose because of fear. Meanwhile, Lily was finishing another busy day at work when her phone suddenly rang. She looked at the screen and froze. It was Ethan. Her heart immediately began racing. For a moment, she simply stared at the phone in disbelief before answering. Ethan's voice sounded nervous. He asked if they could meet. Lily agreed without hesitation. As she walked toward the small park they chose as their meeting place, countless thoughts filled her mind. She had imagined hearing from Ethan many times, but she never expected it to happen like this. Deep inside, a small spark of hope began growing once again. When Ethan finally saw Lily standing beneath the trees in the park, everything he had planned to say suddenly disappeared from his mind. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other, overwhelmed by emotions they had hidden for so long. Then Ethan took a deep breath. He smiled softly and said, "There's something I should have told you a long time ago." Lily listened quietly. Ethan's voice trembled slightly as he continued. "My favorite hello became the hardest goodbye." Tears immediately filled Lily's eyes. Before he could say anything else, she smiled through her tears because she already understood exactly what he meant. For a moment, the world around them seemed to disappear. The noise of the city faded into the background. Lily stepped closer and looked directly into Ethan's eyes. Then she softly admitted the truth she had been carrying in her heart for months. She told him that she loved him too. She confessed that she had missed him every day since leaving the city. Ethan felt an overwhelming sense of relief and happiness wash over him. All the fear, regret, and uncertainty that had haunted them for so long suddenly disappeared. At last, the feelings they had hidden behind friendship were finally spoken aloud. And in that beautiful moment, both realized that their love story was no longer waiting to begin. It had already begun the day a simple stranger smiled and said, "Hello." After finally confessing their feelings, Ethan and Lily felt as though a heavy weight had been lifted from their hearts. For months, they had hidden their emotions behind friendship and fear. Now, for the first time, they could be completely honest with each other. As they walked through the park together that evening, everything felt different. The distance that once separated them no longer seemed impossible. The uncertainty that had caused so much pain had finally disappeared. Both knew that their journey would not always be easy, but they also knew they would no longer face life alone. What had started with a simple greeting had become the beginning of something truly special. Over the following months, Ethan and Lily worked hard to build their relationship. They visited each other whenever possible and stayed connected through long phone calls and messages. Some days were difficult because of the distance, but they learned to support each other through every challenge. Whenever one of them felt discouraged, the other was there to listen and offer encouragement. Slowly, they became more than just two people in love. They became partners, best friends, and a source of strength for each other. Their relationship grew stronger because it had been built on trust, honesty, and genuine friendship from the very beginning. 1 year later, Lily returned to Ethan's city for a visit. Together, they decided to revisit the place where everything had started. On a quiet afternoon, they walked to the small bus stop where they had first met. The wooden bench was still there. The road looked the same. Even the sound of passing buses felt familiar. As they sat together, both smiled while remembering that rainy day long ago. It was difficult to believe that a single moment had changed their lives so completely. If Lily had chosen a different seat that day, or if she had never said hello, their paths might never have crossed. As they sat together, Ethan looked at Lily and quietly laughed. "Can you believe everything started with one word?" he asked. Lily smiled and nodded. The more they thought about it, the more incredible it seemed. Life-changing moments rarely announce themselves when they arrive. Sometimes they appear quietly, hidden inside ordinary days. A smile, a conversation, a simple greeting. Most people would have forgotten that moment immediately, but for Ethan and Lily, it became the beginning of a journey that neither of them could have imagined. They realized that some of the most important things in life often begin in the simplest ways. As the sun slowly disappeared below the horizon, Ethan and Lily sat side by side, watching the sky turn shades of orange and gold. The same two strangers who once sat together in silence had now found a future together. And perhaps that is the lesson hidden within their story. Never underestimate the power of small moments. Never be afraid to speak to someone new, and never let fear stop you from expressing what is truly in your heart. Because sometimes a simple hello can become a lifelong friendship. Sometimes it can become the greatest love story of your life. And sometimes it can change everything forever.